Bellamy Ashford had 17 dry cleaners on speed dial, a personal laundry service that picked up twice weekly, and a housekeeper named Margot who ironed her silk blouses with religious precision. None of that explained why she was standing inside Thornton's coin wash on a Tuesday evening, feeding quarters into a machine older than her trust fund. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting everything in pale yellow. 3 rows of industrial washers hummed in rhythm, and the air smelled like fabric softener and something fried from the chicken spot next door. South Philly wasn't her territory. Her penthouse sat 40 minutes north in Rittenhouse Square, where doormen remembered her coffee order and strangers didn't make eye contact. Yet here she was. Week 4. Zaire Thornton noticed her the first time she walked in. Hard not to. Women in cashmere coats didn't usually push through his door looking like they'd accidentally GPS'd into the wrong zip code. But she'd loaded her machine, sat in the corner, and read a book like she belonged. Never spoke to anyone. Never complained about the wobbly chairs or the vending machine that ate dollars. Just washed, dried, left. Tonight he watched her from behind the counter, pretending to sort quarters while she folded a plain gray hoodie. Nothing designer about it. Nothing that matched the diamond studs in her ears or the watch on her wrist that cost more than his monthly rent. "Dryer 3 runs hot," he said, breaking his own rule about leaving her alone. "Might want to pull your stuff early." She looked up. Gray eyes. Guarded. "Thanks." One word. That was all he'd gotten in 4 weeks. He nodded and went back to his quarters, but something about the interaction stayed with him, something he couldn't name. After she left, Cecil shuffled through the door, his army jacket patched with duct tape, his beard gray and untrimmed. The old man had been coming to Thornton's since Zaire's grandmother opened the place in 1987. He never washed clothes, just sat in the warmth when the shelters were full. "Cold one tonight," Cecil muttered, settling into his usual chair. "Graham's left soup in the back," Zaire said. "Still hot." Cecil grunted his thanks and disappeared behind the counter. When he returned 20 minutes later, he was holding a crumpled $20 bill. "Found this in the jacket," Cecil said, voice thick. "Ain't mine." Zaire frowned. "Where'd you get that jacket?" "Lost and found bin. You said I could take it last week." But Zaire hadn't put any money in that jacket. He checked the bin regularly. Someone else had. His eyes drifted to the door, then to the corner chair where the mystery woman always sat. No, couldn't be. "Hello, the Shade of Love family. So happy you're here. Before we jump into the next part of the story, tell us, where are you watching from? Drop your country and state in the comments. Also, how's the story been so far? We love reading your thoughts. Yes, every single comment, and it really keeps us motivated. Let's aim for 50 comments on this video. Think we can hit it? Your support means the world, so don't forget to comment, share, and keep the energy flowing. Bellamy's corner office at Ashford Capital gleamed with the kind of cold perfection that belonged in architecture magazines. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Philadelphia skyline. White furniture, glass desk. Nothing out of place. Nothing warm. She sat in her ergonomic chair at 6 a.m., reviewing quarterly projections, but her mind kept drifting to a fluorescent-lit laundromat and the way the owner's voice had sounded when he warned her about Dryer 3. Not flirtatious, not dismissive, just human. When was the last time someone had spoken to her like that? "You're here early." Her mother's voice cut through the silence like a scalpel. Colette Ashford never knocked. She entered rooms like she owned them, which, technically, she did. 62 years old, silver hair sculpted into submission, wearing Chanel-like armor. "Board meeting at 9, Bellamy said without looking up. "I heard you've been taking evening drives." Colette settled into the chair across from her daughter, crossing her ankles with practiced elegance. "Danica mentioned you've been leaving the office at odd hours." Of course Danica had mentioned it. Her assistant reported to her mother before she reported to Bellamy. Everyone in this building did. "I needed air. Air exists in Rittenhouse Square." Bellamy finally met her mother's eyes. "I'm allowed to drive through the city, Mother." "Through South Philadelphia?" Colette's lip curled slightly. "Darling, there's nothing down there but poverty and crime statistics. If you need a project, I can arrange a charity board position, something with visibility. The museum committee has an opening." Bellamy thought about Cecil's face when he'd found that 20 in his jacket last week. She'd watched from her car, parked across the street, as he'd walked out of Thornton's with a brown bag of food and tears streaming down his weathered cheeks. No visibility, no cameras, no tax write-off. Just a man who'd been cold, and now he wasn't. "I'll consider the museum," Bellamy said, because that was easier than explaining that she'd felt more alive folding laundry among strangers than she'd felt in this glass tower in years. Colette studied her daughter for a long moment, then rose with the fluid grace of old money. "Weston is joining us for dinner Friday. He's been asking about you." Bellamy's jaw tightened. "I'm not interested in Weston. Interest is irrelevant, darling. Compatibility is what matters. His family's fund and ours would be—" I said no. The words hung between them, sharp and unfamiliar. Bellamy rarely said no to her mother. The surprise on Colette's face was almost worth the argument that would come later. Almost. After her mother left, Bellamy opened her desk drawer and pulled out a stack of $20 bills. She had 12 hoodies to buy before Tuesday. The lunch rush at Raven's Cuts always smelled like coconut oil and gossip. Zaire sat in his usual chair, second from the door, good view of the street, while his best friend shaped up a teenager in the next seat. "So let me understand," Raven said, clippers buzzing. "Rich white lady comes to your laundromat every week, doesn't talk to nobody, folds her own drawers, and you think she's leaving money for homeless folks?" "I'm not thinking anything. I'm just saying it's strange. Strange as my Aunt Phyllis putting hot sauce on ice cream. This?" Raven pointed the clippers at Zaire. "This is a mystery, and you love a mystery." Zaire didn't argue. He'd always been the one asking questions nobody else bothered with. Why the city kept cutting funding to rec centers. Why his grandmother's block never got the same street repairs as downtown. Why people walked past Cecil like he was invisible. "Maybe she's running from something," the teenager in Raven's chair offered. "Like witness protection." "Boy, hush," Raven said. "Grown folks talking." But Zaire considered it. Bellamy. He'd learned her name from the credit card she'd used once at the vending machine. Moved through his laundromat like someone trying not to be seen, which was impossible given what she looked like. But she tried anyway. That night, he tested his theory. He placed a worn denim jacket in the lost and found bin, right on top where it was visible. No money inside. Then he waited. Bellamy arrived at her usual time, 7:15 p.m., when the after-work crowd had cleared and only the regulars remained. She loaded her machine, sat in her corner, and read. An hour later, she moved her clothes to the dryer, then spent exactly 8 minutes in the back corner near the vending machines, near the lost and found bin. When she left at 8:47 p.m., Zaire waited a full 5 minutes before checking the jacket. $40. 2 20s, crisp and folded, tucked into the inside pocket. He stood there, holding the money, trying to reconcile the woman who drove a Mercedes and wore diamonds with the woman who snuck cash into strangers' coat pockets like some kind of reverse pickpocket. "You good?" Graham's Odessa's voice came from the doorway. His grandmother, 72 years old, silver locks pulled back, reading glasses perched on her nose, watched him with knowing eyes. "Someone's been leaving money in the lost and found." Grams shuffled over, looked at the 20s, then at her grandson. "The pretty one who don't talk? How'd you know?" "Baby, I've been running this place since before you were born." She patted his cheek. "I know everything. Question is, what you gonna do about it?" Zaire looked at the money, then at the door Bellamy had walked through. He had absolutely no idea. The confrontation happened on a rainy Thursday, 1 week after Zaire confirmed his theory. Bellamy was loading her usual machine, number 7, far corner, away from the windows, when his shadow fell across her laundry basket. "We need to talk." She looked up, and for the first time, he saw something beneath the careful composure, a flicker of fear. "About what?" "About the $40 you left in a jacket that wasn't yours." The fear shifted to something harder, defensive. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Bellamy." Her name felt strange in his mouth, intimate in a way he hadn't intended. "I've been watching. Every week you put money in the lost and found. Coats, hoodies, jeans, anything that looks like it might end up with someone who needs it." She stood slowly, abandoning her laundry. "You've been watching me?" "Hard not to when you're the only person in here who don't belong." The words came out wrong, and he knew it immediately. Her face shuttered closed like a door slamming. "I'll find another laundromat." "That's not—" He caught her arm as she turned, then released it just as quickly when she flinched. "I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm asking why. Why does it matter?" "Because Cecil cried when he found that 20. Because Jonetta bought her kids dinner for the first time in a week. Because you keep showing up to a place that clearly makes you uncomfortable, and instead of complaining about the chairs or the lighting or any of the things I'm sure aren't up to your standards, you just give." Bellamy stared at him. The rain hammered against the windows, and somewhere in the back, a dryer squeaked on every rotation. "My standards?" she repeated, voice low and dangerous. "Look at you. Look at this place. You don't fit. And that means I can't care about people? That I can't see someone struggling and want to help? I didn't say that. You implied it." She grabbed her basket, wet clothes and all. "Everyone looks at me and sees the same thing, the money, the clothes, the address. They don't see—" She stopped herself, jaw tight. "They don't see what?" "Nothing. Forget it." She was almost to the door when he spoke again. Softer this time. "Every Tuesday, Grams makes soup for anyone who walks in hungry. Every Friday, I let people who can't afford the machines wash for free. This laundromat has been taking care of this neighborhood for almost 40 years. He paused. "So when I see someone else doing the same thing, someone I wouldn't expect, yeah, I notice. And I want to know why." Bellamy stood at the door, hand on the glass, rain streaking down the other side. "Because nobody should be invisible," she said quietly. "And money is the only thing I have that makes people see anything at all." She pushed through the door and disappeared into the storm. 3 days passed. Bellamy didn't return to the laundromat. She told herself it didn't matter. There were other ways to help. Anonymous donations, foundation grants, the museum board her mother kept pushing. Clean, distant, appropriate ways that didn't involve fluorescent lights and awkward confrontations with men who saw too much. But she couldn't stop thinking about his face when he'd said Cecil cried. At work, she moved through meetings on autopilot, smiled when expected, approved budgets, rejected proposals, the machinery of wealth grinding forward, indifferent to the people it crushed along the way. "You're distracted," Danica observed, setting a latte on Bellamy's desk. Her assistant was 26, ambitious, and far too observant. "I'm fine. You've read the same page 4 times. Bellamy closed the folder. "What do you know about South Philadelphia? The neighborhoods near the stadiums?" Danica's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose. "That's not really our demographic. I'm aware. Is this about a property acquisition? Because we have analysts for—" "It's personal." The word hung in the air, foreign and uncomfortable. Bellamy didn't do personal. She did strategic, calculated, every relationship measured in potential returns. So why couldn't she stop thinking about a laundromat owner with knowing eyes and a grandmother who made soup for strangers? That night, she drove past Thornton's coin wash without stopping. The lights were on. Through the window, she could see Zaire behind the counter, laughing at something an elderly woman was saying. His whole face changed when he laughed. Softer, younger, real in a way that made her chest ache. She'd spent her entire life surrounded by people who performed happiness. Board members with practiced smiles, socialites with rehearsed laughter. Even her mother's affection felt like a transaction, given and withdrawn based on Bellamy's compliance. But Zaire's laugh was unguarded, genuine. She wanted to know what that felt like. Her phone buzzed. "Mother, Weston confirmed for Friday. Wear the blue Valentino." Bellamy stared at the message, then at the laundromat, then at her own reflection in the car window. Expensive highlights, flawless makeup, a face designed to project confidence she'd never actually felt. Who was she? Underneath all of it, she didn't know. That was the terrifying truth. Strip away the money, the name, the carefully constructed image, and there was nothing left but a woman who snuck cash into strangers' pockets because it was the only way she knew how to connect. Zaire had called her invisible act giving. Her mother would call it weakness. Bellamy wasn't sure which one of them was right, but for the first time in years, she wanted to find out. She put the car in drive and pulled away from the curb, already knowing she'd be back on Tuesday. "Hello, the Shade of Love family. So happy you're here. Before we jump into the next part of the story, tell us, Where are you watching from? Drop your country and state in the comments. Also, how's the story been so far? We love reading your thoughts. Yes, every single comment. And it really keeps us motivated. Let's aim for 50 comments on this video. Think we can hit it? Your support means the world, so don't forget to comment, share, and keep the energy flowing. She came back on Tuesday. Zaire saw her Mercedes pull up from where he stood restocking the detergent shelf. Something in his chest loosened. Relief he hadn't earned and definitely shouldn't feel. He waited until she'd loaded her machine before approaching. This time he brought a peace offering. 2 cups of coffee from the Puerto Rican bakery next door. Café con leche, he said, setting one on the folding table beside her. Best on the block. Consider it an apology. She looked at the cup, then at him. For what? For saying you don't fit. That was... He searched for the right word. Presumptuous. It was accurate. Maybe. He sat in the chair across from her, leaving space between them. But accurate and kind ain't always the same thing. Bellamy wrapped her hands around the coffee cup, and he noticed her nails were unpainted. Simple. Nothing like the polished perfection she projected everywhere else. Why do you do it? She asked. The free washes, the soup. You can't be making much profit running a laundromat like a charity. Grams would haunt me from the grave if I turned this place into something it ain't. He smiled. She started Thornton's because her mama used to wash white folks' clothes for pennies. Said she wanted a place where people could clean their own lives with dignity, keep something for themselves. That's beautiful. That's survival. He leaned back, studying her. This neighborhood's been written off since before I was born. City don't invest here. Developers don't build here. So we take care of each other because nobody else will. And me? What am I in all of that? The question was genuine, almost vulnerable. Zaire considered his answer carefully. Honestly? I don't know yet, but I know you keep coming back. I know you give without wanting credit, and I know that whatever you're running from, it scares you more than a neighborhood everyone else avoids. Bellamy's eyes glistened, but she blinked it away. I'm not running. Then what are you doing? The dryer buzzed. Her clothes were ready, but she didn't move to get them. I'm trying to feel something, she said quietly. My whole life, everything has been decided for me. The schools, the career, the people I'm supposed to love. And somewhere along the way, I stopped feeling any of it. I just perform. Every single day I perform. And here, no one knows my name. No one expects anything. I can just be. Zaire nodded slowly. Then be. Nobody's stopping you. You stopped me. You saw. I see a lot of things. He held her gaze. Doesn't mean I'm going to tell anyone. For a long moment, they sat in silence while the machines hummed around them. Then Bellamy stood, retrieved her laundry, and folded it with careful precision. Before she left, she paused at the door. Same time Thursday? Zaire smiled. I'll have the coffee ready. Friday arrived with the weight of expectation Bellamy had been dreading all week. The Ashford dining room could seat 24. Tonight, it held only 4. Bellamy, her mother, her father Fletcher, and Weston Carmichael, whose smile hadn't changed since prep school. Confident, entitled, and completely unearned. The merger talks are progressing beautifully, Fletcher said, swirling brandy in a crystal glass. At 56, he still carried himself like the rowing champion he'd been at Yale. Carmichael Holdings and Ashford Capital could dominate the Northeast Corridor. A marriage of dynasties, Colette added, her eyes fixed meaningfully on Bellamy, in every sense. Weston reached across the table and covered Bellamy's hand with his. His palm was soft, the hands of a man who'd never worked for anything in his life. We'd make quite the team, Belle. She hated when he called her that. She hated everything about this. The rehearsed conversation, the strategic seating, the way her parents discussed her future like a stock portfolio. I'm focused on work right now, she said, sliding her hand away. Work will always be there. Colette's voice hardened. Opportunities like Weston won't. Opportunities. Bellamy set down her fork. Is that what we're calling arranged marriages now? Fletcher's jaw tightened. Watch your tone. My tone? She laughed, surprising even herself. You're selling me off like a subsidiary, and I'm supposed to watch my tone? Bellamy. Colette's warning was ice cold. This is not the time. When is the time, Mother? When the contracts are signed? When I'm walking down an aisle I never chose? Weston leaned back, amusement flickering in his eyes. She's spirited. I like that. Don't, Bellamy snapped. Don't sit there and act like my objection is foreplay. I don't want this. I don't want you. I don't want any of this. She stood, napkin falling to the floor, and walked out before anyone could stop her. In her car, hands shaking on the steering wheel, she didn't think about where she was going. Her body already knew. 20 minutes later, she was parked outside Thornton's coin wash, staring at the familiar glow through the windows. It was almost 10 p.m. The closed sign hung on the door. But Zaire was inside, mopping the floor, and when he looked up and saw her standing in the rain, again, he didn't hesitate. He unlocked the door. You okay? Bellamy opened her mouth to say yes, to perform composure the way she'd been trained, but what came out instead was a sob, raw and ugly and completely uncontrolled. Zaire pulled her inside, closed the door against the storm, and let her fall apart in a laundromat that smelled like fabric softener and something that felt dangerously like home. They sat on the floor between rows of washers, backs against the machines, sharing the last of Grams's soup from a thermos Zaire kept in the back. Bellamy had stopped crying 20 minutes ago, but she hadn't stopped talking. The words poured out like water from a broken dam. The pressure, the expectations, the suffocating weight of being an Ashford. They've had my life planned since birth, she said, voice hoarse. The schools, the internships, the exact trajectory of my career. And Weston. God, Weston has been circling since I was 16, like a vulture waiting for the right moment. Why don't you just leave? She laughed bitterly. And go where? Do what? Everything I have is tied to them. The job, the apartment, the money, it's all Ashford. Without them, I'm nobody. That ain't true. You don't know that. Zaire turned to face her, his expression serious. I know you've been coming here for weeks, giving away money you didn't have to give. I know you remembered Cecil's name after meeting him once. I know you asked about Jonetta's kids last Thursday like you actually cared. He paused. That's not nobody. That's somebody who's been hiding. Bellamy stared at him. In the dim light of the closed laundromat, with mascara smeared and her expensive dress wrinkled, she looked more real than she ever had in her glass tower. Why are you being kind to me? Why wouldn't I be? Because of what I represent. The money, the privilege. People like me are the reason neighborhoods like this get ignored. Zaire considered this. Maybe, but you're not people like you. You're just you, and I'm still figuring out who that is. So am I. They sat in silence for a moment, the hum of the building settling around them. Can I tell you something? Bellamy asked. Go ahead. The first time I came here, it was an accident. I got lost after a board meeting and my GPS glitched. I pulled over to figure out directions and saw Cecil sitting outside, shivering. I went into the gas station to buy him a coffee, and the cashier looked at me like I was insane. That's South Philly for you. But I couldn't stop thinking about him, so I came back, and then I kept coming back. And somewhere along the way, this place became the only part of my week that felt real. Zaire nodded slowly. Real is rare. People spend their whole lives avoiding it. Is that what you think I was doing? Avoiding? I think you were surviving. Same as everyone else. He offered her the thermos. Now you're just surviving somewhere different. Bellamy took a sip of the soup. Chicken and rice, still warm, and something in her chest unknotted. Not fixed, not healed, but loosened, just enough to breathe. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For not making me explain myself? For just letting me be here? Zaire smiled. That's what Thornton's is for. The news broke on a Monday morning, splashed across the Philadelphia Inquirer like gasoline waiting for a match. Ashford Capital acquires South Philly block for luxury development. Bellamy read the headline 3 times before the words made sense. The case article detailed her father's latest project, a mixed-use development that would transform 6 square blocks of blighted urban space into upscale condominiums and retail. The projected timeline was 18 months. The laundromat's address was listed in paragraph 4. She was in her father's office within the hour, the newspaper crumpled in her fist. You're buying Zaire's block? Fletcher didn't look up from his computer. I'm revitalizing a neglected neighborhood. The city council approved it last night. Revitalizing? You're displacing hundreds of families. I'm creating opportunity, jobs, housing, tax revenue. For who? The people who already live there can't afford what you're building. Fletcher finally met her eyes, his expression cold. This is business, Bellamy. If you can't separate emotion from strategy, perhaps you're not ready for the responsibilities we've discussed. She felt the threat beneath his words. The corner office, the board seat, the future she'd been groomed for, all of it contingent on compliance. There has to be another site, somewhere that doesn't destroy an entire community. There isn't. The zoning is perfect. The acquisition costs are minimal, and frankly, this conversation is over. Bellamy stood, frozen, her mind racing. Thornton's coin wash had been in Zair's family for almost 40 years. Graham's Odessa had built it from nothing. It wasn't just a business. It was a legacy, a gathering place, a sanctuary for everyone the city had forgotten, and her family was about to bulldoze it. That evening, she drove to South Philly with a folder full of documents she'd pulled from the company server. Development timelines, acquisition contracts, the names of every property owner targeted for buyout. Zaire was behind the counter when she walked in. His brother Micah, 24, same eyes, sharper edges, was helping a customer fold sheets. "We need to talk," Bellamy said. Something in her voice made Zaire's smile fade. He led her to the back room, past Graham's Odessa's soup station and the wall of family photos stretching back decades. "What's wrong?" She handed him the folder, watched his face as he read, saw the exact moment comprehension hit, the way his jaw tightened, the way his hands gripped the paper. "Your father?" he said quietly. "I didn't know. I swear, I didn't know until this morning. But you know now." He looked up, and for the first time, she saw anger in his eyes. "So, what are you going to do about it?" The question hung between them like a dare. Bellamy thought about her corner office, her trust fund, the life that had been chosen for her before she could choose for herself. Then she thought about Cecil and Jonetta and Graham's Odessa's soup, and the way this place had made her feel more human than anywhere else on Earth. "I'm going to stop it," she said. Stopping it meant war. Bellamy spent the next week gathering ammunition, environmental impact reports that hadn't been filed, community consultations that had been skipped, a councilman whose vote had been suspiciously timed with a donation to his re-election campaign. Shay Dawkins, the community organizer Zaire had mentioned, became her unlikely ally. 30 years old, natural hair twisted into locks, and a mind sharp enough to cut glass. "You understand what you're doing," Shay said, spreading documents across the laundromat's folding table. "You're not just fighting a development. You're fighting your own family. Publicly. I know. And when they cut you off? When you lose everything?" Bellamy looked around the laundromat, at Graham's Odessa teaching a young mother how to remove stains, at Micah helping Cecil with his crossword puzzle, at Zaire restocking quarters with the quiet dedication of a man who loved what he'd built. "Then I'll have to build something new." Zaire caught her eye from across the room. The anger from last week had faded into something more complicated. Respect, maybe, or the beginning of trust. "The city council meets Thursday," Shay continued. "Public comment period. If we can get enough residents to speak, enough media attention, we might be able to delay the vote. I can do more than that." Bellamy pulled out her phone. "I have contacts at every major news outlet in Philadelphia. By Thursday morning, this story will be everywhere. And your father? We'll have to answer questions he's spent his whole career avoiding." The plan came together faster than anyone expected. By Wednesday night, 3 local news stations had picked up the story. By Thursday morning, protesters lined the streets outside City Hall, holding signs with Thornton's logo and chanting slogans Shay had written. Bellamy stood among them, not behind a podium or a press release, but in the crowd, just another body fighting for something that mattered. Zaire found her near the steps, his grandmother's hand tucked into his arm. "You didn't have to do this," he said. "Yes, I did." "Why?" She thought about all the reasons she could give. Guilt, redemption, the desperate need to feel something real. But what came out was simpler than all of that. "Because you showed me what it looks like to take care of people. And I wanted to be someone who does that too." Graham's Odessa reached out and squeezed Bellamy's hand. Her palm was warm, weathered, strong. "You already are, baby," the old woman said. You just forgot for a little while. The council voted that afternoon. The development was delayed pending further review. It wasn't a victory. Not yet. But it was a start. Hello, the Shade of Love family. So happy you're here. Before we jump into the next part of the story, tell us, where are you watching from? Drop your country and state in the comments. Also, how's the story been so far? We love reading your thoughts. Yes, every single comment. And it really keeps us motivated. Let's aim for 50 comments on this video. Think we can hit it? Your support means the world, so don't forget to comment, share, and keep the energy flowing. The fallout was immediate and brutal. By Friday morning, Bellamy had been removed from all active projects at Ashford Capital. Her corporate card was cancelled, her parking spot reassigned. Security had escorted her from the building while her co-workers watched through glass walls, their faces carefully blank. Her mother's call came at noon. You've destroyed everything we built for you. No, Mother. I destroyed what you built for yourselves. The line went dead. Weston's message arrived an hour later, a single text that read, "Shame. We could have been magnificent." She deleted it without responding. By Saturday, the story had gone national. Iris betrays family to save working-class neighborhood. The headlines painted her as either a hero or a traitor, depending on the outlet. Social media exploded with opinions from strangers who'd never met her, never been to South Philly, never understood what it felt like to finally make a choice that was entirely her own. She weathered it from the back room of Thornton's coin wash, surrounded by the hum of machines and the smell of Grams Odessa's cooking. "You can stay with us," Zaire said, setting a plate of food in front of her. "Grams has a spare room. It ain't fancy, but it's warm." "I can't impose like that. Girl, you just torched your whole life for my family's laundromat. Taking our spare room ain't imposing. It's the least we can do." Bellamy stared at the plate. Fried chicken, collard greens, cornbread, soul food, the kind of meal her mother would have called pedestrian. It looked like the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. "I don't know how to thank you," she whispered. "Then don't. Just eat." That night, she sat on Grams Odessa's porch, watching the neighborhood settle into darkness. Kids rode bikes under streetlights. Music drifted from open windows. Somewhere down the block, someone was grilling, and the smoke carried the particular sweetness of summer in the city. It wasn't Rittenhouse Square. There were no doormen, no marble lobbies, no views of the skyline, but there were people who said hello when they passed. Neighbors who borrowed sugar and returned it with cookies. A community that had survived decades of neglect because they had each other. Bellamy had never had that. Not really. Her world had been full of connections, but none of them were real. This was real. Zaire sat down beside her, 2 beers in hand. He offered one without asking if she drank beer. She didn't, usually, but tonight she took it anyway. "Scared?" he asked. "Terrified." "Good." He clinked his bottle against hers. "Means you're paying attention." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge above the city haze, and for the first time in her life, Bellamy didn't feel like she was performing. She just felt free. 6 months. Later, Thornton's coin wash was still standing. The development had been permanently blocked after an investigation revealed multiple zoning violations and ethical breaches in Ashford Capital's acquisition process. Fletcher faced a congressional inquiry. Colette retreated to their summer home in the Hamptons, humiliated and silent. Bellamy didn't celebrate. There was too much work to do. She'd used the last of her personal savings to help Shay establish a community land trust, protecting the neighborhood from future development. She'd taken a job, a real job, not a title handed to her by family, at a nonprofit focused on affordable housing advocacy. The salary was modest. The work was exhausting. She'd never been happier. The laundromat had become her second home. She helped Grams Odessa with the books, learned to fix the temperamental dryer 3, and discovered she had a talent for listening to people's problems over the hum of the spin cycle. "You're good at this," Zaire said one evening, watching her help a young mother navigate the machines while bouncing a baby on her hip. "At laundry? At people." He smiled. That unguarded smile she'd first seen through the window all those months ago. "Turns out you're not so bad when you stop hiding. Turns out you're not so bad when you stop judging. I never judged you." "Liar." He laughed, and the sound filled the room like warmth. Later, after the last customer left and Grams retreated to her television programs, Zaire found Bellamy in the back corner, folding the same hoodie she'd brought that very first night. "Why do you still wash that thing?" he asked. "You've got to have better clothes by now. This one's my favorite." She held it up. Plain gray, slightly faded. Unremarkable in every way. "It reminds me of who I was when I walked through that door, and who I was becoming." Zaire stepped closer, close enough that she could smell the detergent on his shirt and the coffee on his breath. "Who are you now?" Bellamy considered the question. 6 months ago, she wouldn't have had an answer. She'd been a collection of expectations, a performance of personhood, a woman so lost in other people's visions that she'd forgotten to create her own. Now she knew. "I'm someone who gives without needing credit," she said. "Someone who stays when things get hard. Someone who finally understands that the best things in life aren't found in glass towers." "And what are they found in?" She looked around the laundromat, the buzzing lights, the worn chairs, the wall of family photos that now included one of her. "Places like this. People like you." Zaire kissed her then, soft and certain, and Bellamy kissed him back with everything she had. Outside, the neighborhood hummed with life. Inside, two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely place discovered something neither had expected: home.